Hello to everyone watching us today. We have an amazing woman who overcame stage 4 cervical cancer 26 years ago using a cocktail of off-label drugs and supplements to target multiple cancer pathways and this way to starve and kill cancer. She is an author of the best-selling book, How to Starve Cancer Without Starving Ourselves. This is not just another book about cancer. It's an inspiring personal story about the power of human spirit combined with great scientific work on the metabolism of cancer cells. This is the book that doctors, scientists, and researchers acknowledge is likely to spark a radical change in the approach to treating all types of cancer. So, hello, Jane, and welcome.
Great. Thanks very much for having me on.
Hello.
Thank you for taking the time to share with the Bulgarian audience more about yourself and your discoveries in the field of cancer metabolism and the use of off-label drugs in the field of oncology. Okay. My name is Marina Pejcheva, and here with me is Cvetomira Stefanova. We are both personally affected by breast cancer, and 5 years ago, inspired by the idea in your book, we created a Bulgarian Facebook group called Metabolic Approach to Cancer, Off-Label Drugs and Supplements, in which we have been publishing medical and scientific studies on the use of off-label drugs and natural supplements to target the metabolism of cancer cells. Now, we represent a community of more than 2,000 people in Bulgaria with various types of cancer who want to know more about your discoveries. And with this interview, your findings will reach many more people in Bulgaria.
I really hope so. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing my book in Bulgarian. I haven't received it yet, but I know it's printed.
Okay. Finally, we are happy to announce to Bulgarian readers that thanks to East West Publishing House, the book How to Starve Cancer has already been published in Bulgaria.
Brilliant.
So
yeah, I had a Bulgarian follower on my off-label drugs group, the English one, say that she just received it and it was helping her with the treatment of her father with lung cancer. So great. I'm already making changes and you've already sold some copies. So that's terrific. Well done.
Yeah, we're so happy for that. So,
hello, Jane. Hello, Jane.
Hi.
It's a great pleasure for me. It's a normal pleasure to me to have you today with us. I remember one video with Chris work that you made about 6 years ago.
Yeah, long time ago.
I was so impressed by this video. It was an eye-opener for me, a game changer. It was the missing link, if I could call it so, for my cancer journey. So immediately I bought the book, of course, and I read it. And later I bought the second edition with ferroptosis.
Brilliant.
And I'm certain that the Bulgarian audience today will really appreciate this interview and it will be so impressed that I was 6 years ago of your work.
Okay, and are you both scientists? Do you have any kind of medical background, or have you just grasped the concepts without too much trouble, or did you have to read it many times before you got hold of it?
Yes. We are normal person. We have any medical
backgrounds. No medical backgrounds. I'm a psychologist. So
yeah, okay. Well, my background was a physiotherapist, so I didn't really understand oncology. I knew a little bit, but really, I've taught myself everything. I've kind of tried to unpick the metabolism of cancer, and it is the missing link. Like you say, it is the part that we are not addressing, because that's what we need to get, because that's the stem cell. The stem cell works in that metabolism way, and that gets left behind with chemo and radiotherapy. So it's really important to add treatments. It's not to say do something different. I want to make it absolutely clear to your listeners that this is not an alternative treatment. These are supplements, off-label drugs, there's exercise, there are many things that you can do, good sleep, lower your stress. This will all help, your chemo treatments or your immunotherapy, radiotherapy, whatever you're doing, it'll help it work better. And that's the whole point of what I'm trying to do, because there are pieces of the jigsaw that aren't in place with the treatments that we have at the moment. And the cancer stem cell wasn't really discovered until the 90s, but it's still not recognized by a lot of oncologists that this is a problem in every cancer. And they deny it. They blank it. I don't know why they blank this idea that the cancer stem cell is a problem, but it is a problem. And there are ways, and there are drugs, these off-label drugs, these cheap drugs, and also supplements that can help target the cancer stem cell, because that's what makes the cancer recur. If you do all the treatments and you don't target the cancer stem cell, that's the seed that can start the cancer off again. So really key to try and block that.
For the Bulgarian audience, for the people that didn't know you, you could share briefly, very briefly, your cancer journey, how it is began, and what led you to follow this unique and unconventional path.
Yeah, I eventually became a bit of a guinea pig, really. But this was only because I couldn't find the right answers with what I was doing. So my journey started way back in 1994, long time ago, and I was quite young. And I had cervical cancer, which nobody expected. It had been missed. And I hadn't yet got married. It was the kind of situation where it really upset, not just, it wasn't just a lump to be taken out and removed. It was a hysterectomy. It affected my fertility. I lost the ability to have kids at that point. The radiotherapy destroyed my ovaries, so I couldn't have, my eggs weren't saved at that time. So it was a very devastating experience for me, because all of the treatments destroyed my ability to have that future life that I had planned in my head. And I just got together with my husband at the time, and it affected our relationship in a big way, and I was hugely depressed for a long time. And then my mother got breast cancer. Well, in fact, she already had breast cancer, and she kept it a little bit quiet. She just called it a little spot of bother. And then in 96, it ended up being stage 4. And I really rather suspect that my journey, probably the depression and everything else that I was suffering, and the fact that I'd lost my fertility, probably affected her. So she then ended up passing away quite quickly in about 8 weeks. But during those 8 weeks, I was frantically trying to find things that would help her. And it woke me up to the fact that there were things that I should be doing for myself. I was only one step away from stage 4. I had cancer throughout all my lymph nodes. I was in a bit of a mess, and they kind of placated me with sort of, it's only stage 1B, which with cervical cancer is not right. In any other cancer, they would class it as stage 3, because once it gets to your lymph nodes, that's kind of stage 3. When it gets to another organ, then it's stage 4. So I woke up to the fact that diet, insulin growth factor, which you find in a lot of dairy and meat products, I needed to cut down on those. So I cut those out of my diet for a while. I still actually don't have much dairy, and I don't have much meat either these days. But it was a low GI diet. I had to go low glycemic, really cut down on the sugar too. And that helped. And I was taking lots of green tea, drinking lots of that, because that blocks something else which people don't know about, called glutamine. Everybody focuses on glucose, the sugar, as being a problem, but it isn't. There's this other factor, glutamine, which is a protein, this amino acid that drives cancer. And I was drinking a lot of green tea, and I think that helped a lot, because that blocks the entry of glutamine into the cancer cell. It's hard to block glutamine running around your body. It's the most abundant amino acid that we have, so you can't stop it in your system. What you can do is stop it getting into your cancer cell. And that's what I did. I drank 4 to 10 cups of green tea a day, and I hate green tea, but I did it. And then I started layering in lots of supplements. So I became known as maracas, because, I was just like, shake me and I'd rattle. And it was a journey that ended up being, so it spread to my lungs in 99. So I was then stage 4. Given a short time, you know, within a year, they gave me that I was going to live. The average survival for stage 4 cervical, and it's really aggressive, is 12 weeks. So, you know, that's what they expected me to die around, you know, 3 or 4 months was probably my lifespan. So I did a lot in terms of looking after myself, the stress, everything. And I tried to find as many inspirational stories as I could, because that is really key. And that's what I want to impart to everybody else, is my inspiring story, to show you it can be done. This is the thing. Even if you've got stage 4, even if they turn around and say nothing more they can do for you, I guarantee you there are things that can be done. It may be too late to pull you back from the brink, but you can certainly extend your life. And I have people doing extremely well who follow me. You know, not all of them, unfortunately, go into remission. But I do have many of them who do go into remission, and that's terrific. But I carried on this journey, and it didn't end at the point where I had this secondary in my lung. I ended up having myelodysplasia, which is a bone marrow cancer, as a result of the huge doses of chemoradiotherapy I'd had before. And that it's a kind of a sneaky pre-AML, acute myeloid leukemia. And I knew that was going to kill me very fast. I was already on a downhill slope, and that was like a steep descent all of a sudden. So I knew I had to do something pretty fast. And I'd already started looking in the journals, and I'd kept copies of things that I thought were useful, but I didn't have the guts at the time initially to actually do it. But once this hit, I thought, Christ, if I don't do something different, I'm dead. So I used myself as a bit of a guinea pig. I went to different doctors to accumulate different drugs, because I knew they probably wouldn't prescribe the whole lot for me. And in fact, back then, my oncologist prescribed 2 of the drugs. So I had a statin and a Todlac, which is normally used. A Todlac is a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, so it's an arthritis drug. And the other one was a statin, and that's normally used for high cholesterol. All right, so I got those 2, and then I added dipridamol, which is an antiplatelet drug, which was shown to have effects with cervical cancer, and also it has since been shown to be very strongly implicated with the leukemias. But unfortunately, as soon as you have treatment, your platelet numbers can go all over the place. So they don't like prescribing it these days. But for me, my platelets were fine. That got added into my cocktail. And then I was taking other things as well. I was taking berberine, which is a natural version of metformin. And metformin is used for diabetes. So these are all drugs that you wouldn't normally expect to use for cancer, but they all have the effect of shutting down the nutrient pathways, the feeding pathways that cancer uses in order to drive its growth and to produce all of these weird, you know, this is what it does. It spews out lactate, which is an acidic. It's what happens when you go for a run and you haven't got enough oxygen, you have lactic acid. That's what cancer cells do. They spew out this lactic acid, and then the body reacts by making more blood vessels to take away the lactic acid, and then it shuts down the immune system, and then you have this runaway fast dividing cells. So it's a step-by-step process of what happens, but the metabolism of the cell is really critical, and this is what oncologists haven't recognized yet. And my book is kind of opening up their eyes, I hope, to the whole prospect of adding this in as another bit in the toolbox that they can use just to create better protocols.
So, Jane, you have
yes.
you have in your book over here
it's the progression. So yeah, on the left there you have that circle. That's kind of denoting what happens on the cell surface, because it's the tumor microenvironment that actually starts cancer. People don't know that. They think it's the genes, but it isn't. Actually, cancer starts in the cell membrane. Then there are signals that go in, and that triangle there, which I've got here in bigger.
Yeah.
That's the cancer cell metabolism. That's just a short version. That's a sort of a small diagram. of this. And this is
so here is where you come in with this one.
Yeah.
That's
what I'm best known for. That's my metro map. Okay. And that's the bit that people recognize me best for. They kind of haven't quite clocked on to the fact I've unraveled the whole of cancer's progression as well. They kind of just focus on this, which is great. You know, if you're going to try and get rid of your cancer, you need to starve it. You need to shut its ability to fuel itself. And cancer is really, really hungry. And if it doesn't have the nutrients that it wants, it can't actually continue dividing. So that's what we need to do, is just shut down those pathways in order to allow your body to overcome it and to allow your immune system to kick back in. Because once you have all of this abnormal lactic acid spewing out, it does shut down the immune system. Once you can control that, you have a better chance of getting your immune system to do a better job.
Sadie, maybe you wanted to ask something about the diet.
I have some problems with the audio. I barely heard something. That's why I'm so close. When are you talking about the Metro map? I'm personally very concerned about how to block glutamine. In our Facebook group, the people are very confused how really block it, and many of them didn't realize its importance. I would like to know if we should block it at every stages, or only at stage 3 and 4, or if this depends on the cancer itself, or in the stage.
Yeah, and you're right. It's exactly that. It depends on the type of cancer, and it depends on the stage. So, for example, ovarian cancer is highly glycolytic, so it uses lots of glucose to start with. And as it becomes more aggressive, it uses more glutamine. Now, some other cancers, for example, prostate cancer, starts off using more glutamine. And then as it gets more aggressive, it starts to use more and more glucose. So you have a different perspective depending on what type of cancer you have. But these are things that you can look up on AI. And I think that's a really useful tool that we have. And certainly I never had. And I think it's going to drive the ability for people to research much, much easier once they know what to look for and how to tackle it. So if you look up and you type in, what's my metabolic phenotype? In other words, which of these pathways are really fired up in your cancer? You can type each one in individually, you know. Am I using GLUT1, which is the glucose receptor? Am I using GLUT2, GLUT5? You know, which glucose receptors are involved in your cancer? And then you can, you know, type in, is OXPHOS, which is the normal Krebs cycle using the mitochondria producing energy, or is it this abnormal fermentation that spews out the lactate? Which one is it? And not all cancers are predominantly glycolytic, this glucose. You know, they may be using more OXPHOS. And this is what we found with ER, estrogen positive breast cancer, that those use more OXPHOS to begin with. So they're actually using more glutamine. Sugar is obviously sugar as well, because that's used too. And in fact, fat as well. But the whole point is that it's more one pathway. So it's more, I don't know whether you can see that, but there are two key pathways on here in the red. So we've got OXPHOS and glycolysis here. And those two are really key. Those are like the two crux ones that you really have to tackle first. Unless you've got pancreatic cancer, in which case you need to tackle one on the blue side, because it's very driven by something called macropinocytosis. So it does depend on what type of cancer you have and how you should, you know, how you tackle it. But with breast cancer, for example, just to help you two out, Michael Lazanti, who's a professor, used to work in Manchester in the UK. He's actually gone back to Canada, unfortunately, but he was investigating doxycycline, which is one of the drugs that I know is a very common antibiotic. But what he was doing was blocking the OXPHOS pathway more and more and more, and then shut that one down. The cancer then switches, and that's one of the problems with cancer, is it shifts with the treatment. So any treatment, any diet, any supplements will actually change the way that the cancer expresses itself, and it always tries to find a different route to feed itself. So you block one pathway, it uses the other. So he was blocking one pathway very strongly, and then the glycolytic pathway, which is that glycolysis pathway, was the weaker one in breast cancer. So he targeted the strong pathway, which is the OXPHOS pathway, really, really heavily. And then he started putting in, he actually used vitamin C to block the glycolysis pathway. And that was enough and he's done this in in humans. This is not just in mice. He's actually showed that it can be very effective in humans as well. He did a study in Italy. So there are these, but it's trying to work out what your dominant pathways are for your particular cancer. So yeah, it varies depending on, but this is something you have to learn.
Yes, Jane.
Yeah.
That will bring us to our next question about diets, cancer diets. So there is a lot of dispute in the literature that there is a best diet for cancer, for example, like keto or vegan or low carb. So we would like you to tell what exactly is.
In a nutshell, it has to again be personalized, because some cancers are prone to get cachexia. Cachexia is a condition where you get anorexia, you waste away. The cancer actually starts eating you. It eats the fat, it eats the muscle, because it's feeding itself. All right. And this is a way to block it. But and keto can actually drive that cachexia, and particular in cancers that have something called interleukin-6, which is an inflammatory pathway. It's on my cell membrane thing, and there are ways to sort of stop that and shut that down. But the keto diet can actually drive cachexia. You have to be very careful what you do. Keto initially can be very helpful if you have insulin resistance in your system. So it's a good way to sort of, you might need to kick off with that, but then you shouldn't probably be on it for very long, because the cancer learns to rewire itself again and to use other pathways. And I wasn't quite sure which pathways were switched on by the keto diet, but I have in the last couple of months discovered which ones they are. And statin and metformin, because I use the statin, and the metformin is very commonly used by people now. It's on my Metro map. But those two will help block the resistance of keto. So doing keto on its own, never a good idea. You always need to be doing other things like blocking glutamine as well with green tea. And if you've got prostate cancer or other cancers, curcumin, asolic acid can all help. LDN helps. Tamoxifen actually blocks glutamine. People don't know that, but tamoxifen can actually help block that pathway too.
And Jane, you have a theory about long-term using tamoxifen, that it could bring a glycolytic, sugar driving.
So what it does, because it's blocking glutamine, it ends up driving more glycolytic pathways, and endometrial cancer is very glycolytic. All right. But unfortunately, the estrogen receptors in the endometrium in your uterus are different. And so the tamoxifen can drive a secondary cancer in the endometrium, but there are ways to stop that and block that. That's key as well, to understand the whole shifting from one side to the other. And tamoxifen can be very useful, but it has to be used in combination with things that block this glycolytic side, so that glucose side as well. Yeah.
Just a heads up,
I'm
you have
interested
like
here. I
8
have a
minutes
question.
before the ending of the recording. Just a heads up for that.
How many? How many?
8 minutes, around 8
Oh
minutes. But
God.
we can
Okay, I'll
continue.
talk faster.
We can continue the recording after that as well, just
Okay.
via the same.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just going back to the diet, I didn't really finish that. We just talked briefly about the keto diet. There are other ways to try and starve the cancer. My approach is really not to do anything too extreme. I mean, people go into sort of 10-day fasting. I've even known people do 41-day fastings. And they can do okay to begin with, but again, it's causing another pathway, one called autophagy. Autophagy is the way of sort of self-cleaning, clearing out, and most people think this is great, and it can help prevent cancer. But when you have cancer, it can actually drive the feeding process and drive further cancer. So you have to kind of shut that down a little bit. One of the best things so if you're going to do a fast, you need to be supervised. You need to have electrolytes. I mean, it's not something I recommend, because my approach is really to look at more of a nuanced approach where it's not extreme. You do more things, but at less level, less extreme levels, and I think you get a better result. I do get very worried by people who do these extreme. They can do very well, but you have to be careful. There are other things that you could possibly take if you're going to do an extreme fast, like thymoquinone, which is from black seed oil, and that may help block this autophagy process. So, you know, it's about taking the right combination of things together to actually block the potential downsides. There's always, whatever treatment it is, diet, whatever, you've always got these downsides. But I would say across the board, you need to go low glycemic. So take the levels down. Doctors will say, oh, but your liver then just kickstarts other fat, other sugar pathways. The liver actually just creates sugar, but actually metformin blocks this pathway. It's called gluconeogenesis. So you can actually keep your sugar levels down even better if you take metformin and you're doing a low GI diet and fasting, maybe intermittent. I'm more of a lover of intermittent fasting. That to me seems to be somewhere in the middle where you're not too extreme with one or the other. And I'm quite a fan of intermittent fasting. So that's time restricted. So you can either do that within a certain time frame within the day, or you can do 2 days out of 5 that you're actually going to fast. Or there are different ways of doing it. Alternate days is another way that actually has been shown to be quite good in leukemia. So lots of different ways to do it. So it's really, you've got to do a bit of research, but AI is your friend. You have to look at the research, check that it is proper research done in a good quality research paper like Nature or Cell, and look at the research that it tells you. So it's all out there. I mean, the tools that you have these days are phenomenal, and inspiration of being able to do that, and actually looking at some of the reports that I have in my Facebook group of people who've done well, and what cocktails did they use for particular cancers. And I've got a lot of people on there now, about 108,000 I think at the moment. So there are a lot of stories out there of people who've done well, and not everybody shares their story. There's a lot of people, and most people won't share their story because they're worried it's going to jinx it and it's going to make it come back. But hats off to those who do, and to those who actually get no evidence of disease. It's phenomenal.
Yes, actually, we know about the stories and the positive progresses in your group.
That's it.
And that's an amazing. That's so that this is working.
It does work. It does work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work entirely on its own, but it works with the other conventional treatments, and that's absolutely, I need to make sure that people do realize that this is not this is just an extra boost to your treatment so that it actually works better. That's the whole point. I can't promise everybody's going to get into remission, but it's a way to slow it down. That's the important bit, and give you extra time Extra time is what you need.
So with people with limited financial resources, if they don't have a lot of access for functional doctors or those expensive testings, genetic testings, what can they do on their own budget?
Yeah, I think the best thing is just educate yourself as much as you can. Read the literature, read the book. I also have an online course, which is actually not too expensive. I will be translating it. I just heard myself in Spanish this morning. So it's really weird. And I will be trying to speak in Bulgarian at some point. So I will put that up as another tool for people to use, so they can use the book along with the online course as well. So I will put that up on Teachable at some point. Get around to Bulgarian. So that's we're only just starting to do the Spanish one, and that's kind of like the primary one that we're doing to begin with, and then we'll do Germany, and we'd just go through. I mean, I've now got quite a few languages it's translated into, and I know that people need to have the resources, the ability to look after them and push to get these things as best they can. But I do think, I mean, you can get some of these drugs over the counter, but you must always check. Even if you haven't got a doctor, you need to check with a pharmacist and try and get your local doctor. I don't know what the situation is in Bulgaria, but in the UK, people go to their GPs, and some of them will start to prescribe some of these off-label drugs. So this is how it's kind of working a little bit now as the doctors become more familiar with it. But really, to get a best cocktail, you need to go to somebody who's got a better understanding of how the cancer's driving, and what cocktails you might need to put together. And then the nutrition, that's another whole part, because people don't really understand the nuances of diet, and really it's a topic that needs a lot more discussion, the diet.
Mm-hmm. And so, what are the best? Sorry, Marina?
No, I just wanted to.
Sorry, yes. Supplements. You can get a lot of result just by using the supplements, and then trying to get hold of some of these drugs. I don't recommend people get them on the internet or anything. You don't quite know what you're getting. I think you have to be very careful. And people are very into this fenbendazole ivermectin combination at the moment. That seems to be the drugs du jour, and that worries me. Because that's only weakly targeting oxphos and glycolysis, but it does target them both, but weakly. And it might be enough for some people, but it won't be enough for the majority of people. And you have to be very careful to not think that's just going to be the answer. And people do see results of some people. You've got to, you have got to put the effort in, and the effort comes from you learning. And if your head is just too overwhelmed with everything, then you need to get a carer or somebody else who's actually going to work with you, who has got a level head and isn't going to, get too overwhelmed with it. And some of the problems with cancer is bombarded with this information. And you've also got lots of stuff on the internet, all sorts of things about juicing and stuff like that. And you just don't know where to look. I mean, some therapy used to be a big thing back in, the 90s when I was going through cancer. So yeah, lots of different ways. And macrobiotic, I actually did the macrobiotic diet for about 3 months. And I think it probably was quite useful. There's seaweed in there, which has got iodine, and I think you actually need to get your iodine levels up a little bit. It's not something you should regularly take all the time, but I think you do need to. There are some things that will help boost your results for sure.
Jen, can you tell us a little bit more about your Metro map? It's for the people who
to find it again. Hold on.
Yeah, who just find out about it.
So yeah, this is, so there are three macros in the diet: carb, protein, fat. Okay, and this denotes the three sides of it. So the red is the glucose, the blue are the amino acids, the protein, and the yellow at the bottom is the fat. Okay, So I've just split it, and it's a very basic look at how the cancer pulls in different fuel from different sources, and the way that the cancer will drive itself in different ways. But it's actually, when you look at it, don't get too, people look at all the funny words on it. Don't get too het up by the funny words. Yeah. Just accept mTOR is a protein pathway. It's like, so there are certain proteins that actually stimulate mTOR more, and mTOR is no good in cancer. You need to shut down mTOR. And IGF-1, you need to shut that down. All of these pathways you need to shut down. And the more advanced your cancer, the more of those pathways you probably have to shut off. So, yeah, I mean, you don't have to shut necessarily all of them. I didn't shut all of them when I had stage 4, but I certainly, when I looked at it, I'd actually blocked off. When I reverse engineered what I'd done, I saw that I'd actually blocked off quite a lot of them, because that research wasn't around for me. I kind of instinctively knew that that's what I was doing, but I didn't know how I'd done it. I had to kind of work out. I knew what I'd done, but I didn't quite know the science behind what I'd done. I had this basic concept that I needed to starve the cancer, but the pathways, they kind of, they've been revealed to me by lots of research and digging, and I've done so much literature reading in the past. It's exhausting.
So actually, your metro map is telling us that that's why monotherapy no. either are not working, or they're working short term. So yeah. What we have to understand is that we have to, cancer cells have metabolic plasticity, and it will shift between the fuels. So cocktails actually are what is the key here.
You've got it. You've absolutely got it.
As well as we have a cocktail for HIV, and that's
correct. You must have listened to a few of my podcasts. This is absolutely true. This is what we had with HIV. They ended up giving a cocktail of 9 drugs to start with. They kind of combine them a little bit further down, so they only take something like 3, I think. I don't know. But then they take it you have to constantly take these things during the day to block those pathways. And it's the same thing with cancer. You need to take things regularly through the day in order to block those pathways. So this is one of the things they get wrong, is they take pills in the morning and then they don't do anything for the rest of the day. That you actually have to, things have got short half-lives sometimes, like green tea, for example. Drinking that, I was drinking 4 to 10 cups of tea a day because it does have a short half-life. So you need to keep going and blocking it. And things like lymphoma and leukemia are very glutamine driven. So those do actually have to have more, you have to focus on blocking those glutamine pathways more. Lots of green tea. What
are the most promising off-label drugs that you find in your discoveries, and for you are the best ones?
The key ones.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think metformin and statins, they work synergistically together. They are brilliant. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatories are excellent, but a lot of people have problems with their gut with them. So that's an issue, but you can take cimetidine. But the problem with cimetidine is that it can react with other drugs. It can slow down the metabolism of the drug and actually make it interact more with other drugs. It just makes the side effects potentially worse. So it's a tricky balance. I would say the big one for me, I mean, we've got ivermectin and fenbendazole. Mebendazole is brilliant, by the way. Mebendazole is excellent. It actually targets a lot of the glucose pathways. But I think one that has not really been looked at properly, and in fact, I've just been invited to Birmingham University, and I might end up studying it in the lab and doing a PhD. So we'll see if that happens. Is niclosamide. Now, niclosamide is an amazing drug, all right? And unfortunately, it just gets into the system and doesn't get to the rest of the body particularly well. But it will block glutamine. It'll block many of the problems that you have on the cell surface, which is where that cancer starts. So it does actually work on many, many pathways all the way down. It triggers ferroptosis. It blocks OXPHOS. You know, there are many things that it actually does all the way down. Because it works right at the beginning, it has these downstream effects on all of these other pathways afterwards as well. So I would say niclosamide, mebendazole, and these are anti-parasitic drugs. They're very cheap, and you can get them relatively easily, and they have very low toxicity. That's the thing. So, but the way to make them get into your system a bit more is the tricky bit. So you can take them with liposomal tablets or with liposomal liquids. It'll help it get into your system a bit more. I actually crush up the niclosamide, add it to a bit of MCT oil, and then add that to a liposomal formulation. That will get it into your system a lot better. So niclosamide, I think, is one I want to study in the lab myself. I think that has a huge potential, much more so than ivermectin and fenbendazole, to be honest, I think, from what I can see. So, yeah, that's my research going forward. And I'll probably add a bit more about niclosamide in my next edition, which I don't know whether a third edition will probably have to come out at some point. But yeah, just make everything a little bit more expanded. I don't want to overwhelm people with too much info. I think I've probably got enough. Maybe I just need to stop.
I have one more question. In the second edition, actually, there is a large large section about ferroptosis.
Yeah.
How to starve cancer and then kill it with ferroptosis.
Yes.
Could you just briefly explain?
Okay. All right, but it's also starving cancer, but you starve cancer as something called cysteine. This is an amino acid that actually creates glutathione. Glutathione is your master antioxidant. And when they started using chemo or whatever, they didn't realize it was a high burst of oxidation, so oxidants that were killing off the cancer. Cancer only lives in a little tiny window between antioxidant and oxidant. And if you take it out of that zone into the oxidant zone, it doesn't survive. And in order to do that, to get it into that zone, you need to lower its ability to create this antioxidant, glutathione. And the major element that you can shut down in there is cysteine. So it's blocking the cysteine getting into the cell. There are certain things that will do that, like hypolongumine, which is long pepper, and sorafenib, which they normally use for liver cancer. Olaparib is also really useful, and that has worked really well alongside other things. But the sulfasalazine is another drug that actually is useful for blocking the ability of the cancer cell to take in cysteine. So it just triggers that more oxidant pathway. And then you need to block. It's all about the cell membrane, the lipid, the fatty cell membrane. You actually trigger a cell death in a slightly different way. And what happens is iron is kind of taken up. It's much more, cancer cells are very hungry for iron to drive their metabolic processes. So it has much more iron in it than any other cell. And what you do is you use that ability of gathering lots of iron to actually trigger cell death. You do these things like reduce the amount of cysteine in the cell. You produce more oxidants around. So high dose intravenous vitamin C will be targeted because that actually it reacts with the iron and it creates these what's known as free radicals, which are these oxygen free radicals. And that's what kills the cell. So you actually use the iron. Ferroptosis is really death by iron. So it's actually, it's hoisting it, what we say is hoisting it by its own petard, using it's an Achilles heel that cancer has. It's kind of something that drives it, but then you can use that as an enemy against itself. It's a weapon against itself. That probably didn't make any sense at all. I'm sorry. Bit of science. But
Yeah.
this is where I have the online course, and I think this will be
Yes.
very useful for your readers to have this as a backup for them as well. So I'll let you know when I've translated it into Bulgarian.
Okay.
Otherwise, you can buy it in English.
We are
Your
looking
English is
forward.
perfect.
So your online course is on your page, howtostarvecancer.com.
Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
it's on Teach. So I have a course on Teachable. It's quite a lot of videos, but they're quite short. You know, they're normally between 3 to 5 minutes long. There are 13 modules, and each module has about 5 to 8, maybe, well, actually more than that, about 8 to 10 videos in each module. So there's a lot. It goes through glucose, glutamine, fat, the growth factors, the cell membrane, the tumor microenvironment. It goes through everything. And ferroptosis, a little bit on ferroptosis at the end.
I found
Jane?
it.
Okay,
I found it very useful, your online course, when I was doing intravenous vitamin C. It was absolutely useful for me.
Okay. Did you just listen to that when you're sitting there having your vitamin C drip? Yeah. It's a useful way to spend your time. But I do encourage people just to look at maybe 2 or 3 videos in an evening instead of scrolling on Instagram. They just go and you can look at it on your phone, just have a look at it and just go through the course. And maybe if you find, you might want to add notes or take notes when you're doing it. And I do encourage people to try and create their own metro maps and do the research. So once you've done a video, you go away, you use AI, you use PubMed to actually find things that may be useful for you. And you get much better at reading these articles because you will understand the terminology. It's kind of like, it's not a PhD in people laugh and say, yeah, my course is like teaching you a PhD in cancer metabolism. It's not. It's quite, I think it's quite basic, but that's because I've probably been in it and I've done it for so long. But I do think don't be scared by the terminology. Don't be scared by it all. It will suddenly make much more sense. I'm sure you found that as you were doing it, that you could understand a little bit more. It made more sense the more times you looked at it than when you weren't scared of the words, when they didn't, when they were a bit more familiar to you. It's like learning a new language.
Jane, in your book, you mentioned Care Oncology Clinic, which prescribes a protocol of 4 off-label drugs in addition to standard treatment. Do you know if there are any other clinics that are already interested in implementing this approach in addition to standard treatment?
Yes. So the Care Oncology Clinic has pretty much disbanded. A lot of the doctors with the Care Oncology Clinic didn't feel like it was enough. So they've kind of left and they've got their own clinics now. Many of them have got individual clinics, and that's true in the US and in the UK. They're just starting up more clinics, which is terrific. I just want more doctors and more options for people. And this is where it's going. So I have got on my Facebook, not on my Facebook, on my website, I've got a section for doctors. So if you look under the tab on my menu button on howtostarvecancer.com, there is a doctors tab, and they are doctors all over the world. And most of them will Zoom as well, so you don't have to visit. A lot of these will actually just provide the cocktails of drug just by a Zoom consult. So, you don't have to travel anywhere. It shouldn't be too expensive just to do that, to get the consult and get the drugs. I don't know what it's like in Bulgaria, and I didn't check to see who was nearby on my website. I should have done that.
So we will check.
Yeah. And let your Facebook people know.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Sveti, do you have some questions to ask?
I think that just a little question that left uncovered. Your top 10 supplements that every cancer patient should have in his arsenal? berberine,
my
Danshen,
goodness. Top
and
10.
more.
Oh my God. You want me to tell you off the top of my head? Well, you know, there are some that will block, you know, quercetin, for example, will block that glucose receptor very strongly. Green tea will block the glutamine receptor. Danshen, I think, is brilliant, particularly for breast cancer, because that kind of triggers ferroptosis.
Actually, Danshen is great for HAR positive breast cancer. HAR2 positive.
HAR2, yeah, HER2. That's very fat driven, actually, HER2. So that's exactly right, because Danshen will help block that fatty acid oxidation that happens in the cell. So absolutely, yeah. And it does depend, you know, I'd say top 10, but actually it does depend on the type of cancer that you have. I mean, I've got lots of supplements listed on my list, but you really need to be blocking the glucose, the glutamine, and the fat. I've given you 3 that will do that. But then you layer in other things as well. So even things like, what else am I going to say? So berberine, obviously, is a natural form of metformin, and what I use, that's really good. Curcumin, ursolic acid. There are a great many of them that will actually help block all of these pathways. Lutein, niacin in combination with statins, you have to be a little bit careful because you don't want to be lowering your fat too much. But you know, if you have a very fat-driven cancer, that may be what you need to do. That you actually need to take niacin and a statin, but you just have to monitor it a little carefully. So yeah, lots of different supplements can be extremely useful. Luteolin, I like polydatin, which blocks the pentose phosphate pathway, because DHEA is not something you should take if you have breast cancer or prostate cancer or any hormone-driven cancer, but that helps to block one of the pathways too. I took DHEA because my cancer allegedly wasn't driven by hormones. So for me, it was safe, but for breast cancer, you know, it does depends on which cancer you have.
Okay, thanks.
So
Marina, do you have more questions?
No, actually, I don't have any more questions. So if you don't have any, we can.
Did you want to ask about what I felt about the people in my Facebook group doing well? That seemed to be
that's.
So do you want to know about more resources or anything else? I suppose we talked about my website and the online course, and where to find a doctor. I think you've covered most of it, really.
Yeah. So really, in your ever-growing Facebook group has over 100,000 members, and lots of them really are showing and posting their positive progress using their starve and kill protocol. And we witness that also because we are in your Facebook group. And how does this make you feel? With so many positive progress.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Every time I read a positive progress, it sort of lightens my day. It's like a ray of sunshine. It's brilliant. But I don't feel proud for myself. I feel proud for those people, because to actually step out of that paradigm of just going down that just the conventional side, and you have to step out of that and do something different, requires a completely different mental approach. And to do that requires a really strong inner strength to do that and to make the effort, because it's not easy. And you get criticism from family and friends sometimes for doing things. I did as well. You know, they thought I was mad taking all these supplements and things. I didn't really discuss with them. I have doctors in my family, and they had this idea that I was just bonkers. But you know, it requires that inner strength. And I'm so proud of the people that do it. Like, I'm absolutely cheer on all of them. So it's just brilliant. I love it.
Well, we love it too.
Yeah.
So, Jane, thank you again for your time, and this is inspiring interview, and we believe it will be useful for many people. And now, when we have your book in Bulgarian, so you really gave a lot of hope to a lot of people on their cancer journey. So for us, it's been an honor for speaking with you and having this interview. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay. And good luck with the book sales.
For me, Jane, this day will be memorable, sincerely. And we are delighted that the book is already in Bulgarian and that medical professionals and cancer patients will have this tool in their hand because it is very, very important. Thank you again.
Okay, pleasure.
Thank you
good
very
luck.
much.